8 workers are still trapped under the construction tunnel in Telangana after it collapsed on Saturday morning. The incident happened around 8:30 a.m. on Saturday when a portion of the Sri Salem left bank canal tunnel collapsed in Telangana's Nagarkurnool district. While the rescue ops to bring out the 8 trapped workers are on, the teams have said it is difficult to reach the spot due to the mud. In fact, the rescue teams which tried to go inside the collapsed portion of the tunnel while inspecting the site had to come back because they couldn't go further. One of the rescue personnel of the State Disaster Response Force told that there's no chance to go in the spot inside the tunnel. It has completely collapsed and mud is reaching up to the knees. We will have to take another step. In fact, the Indian Army has also joined the rescue operations at the collapse site. Its engineer task force was deployed to assist the rescue operations. The Indian Army's engineer regiment came along with them. In fact, dozer and was put on standby to help with the rescue ops. In fact, here's a report from the ground exactly what is happening there.
तेलंगाना राज्य के नागरकर्नूल के एसएलबीसी के टनल के अंदर जो घटना हुई है उस पर राज्य सरकार, दूसरी तरफ केंद्र सरकार पूरी तरह नजर बनाए रखी हुई है। एक तरफ एनडीआरएफ की टीम है, दूसरी तरफ आर्मी को तक यहाँ पे अधिकारियों ने उतारा है। देखिए, अभी तक ऑक्सीजन अंदर छोड़ा जा रहा है, यही अंदाजा लगाया जा रहा है कि वो पूरी तरह सुरक्षित है, उनको ऑक्सीजन की कमी हो सकती है, इसलिए हम लोग ऑक्सीजन भेज रहे हैं, ये अधिकारियों की तरफ से कहा जा रहा है। देखिए, कल सुबह से लेकर रात भर रेस्क्यू ऑपरेशन चलता रहा, अभी तक कोई राहत की सांस अधिकारियों को नहीं मिली है। अंदाजा यही लगाया जा रहा है कि आज शाम तक पूरी तरह सुरक्षित कार्मिक जो अंदर जो फंसे हुए हैं, जो लेबर जो फंसे हुए हैं, उनको बाहर निकाला जाए। देखिए, ये तेलंगाना का सुनहरा ख्वाब था। तेलंगाना का जिस तरह से जो जनता ने जो लड़कर तेलंगाना को अलग किया था कि नलगुंडा डिस्ट्रिक्ट के कई ऐसे किसान थे जहां पर इस टनल के जरिए से अगर पानी भेजा जाता है तो कई हजारों एकड़ फसलें आबाद हो सकती है, कई हजारों एकड़ फसलों को सजाया जा सकता है। इसी ख्वाब को लेकर पिछली सरकार ने भी इस काम को शुरू किया था, मगर किसी वजह से काम रुक जाने के बाद तेलंगाना की कांग्रेस सरकार ने कुछ दिन पहले इस काम को रिस्टोर करने की कोशिश की, मगर अचानक इस घटना ने पूरे देश को हिलाकर रख दिया है। एक तरफ पीएमओ की ऑफिस भी इस पूरे घटना पर अपनी नजर बनाए रखी हुई है, दूसरी तरफ लगातार राज्य सरकार अपने अधिकारियों को भेजकर जो अंदर जो लेबर फंसे हुए उनको पूरी तरह सुरक्षित निकालने का काम जारी है। मगर फिल वक्त ऑक्सीजन भेजा जा रहा है, दूसरी तरफ अधिकारी और देश भर के जाने माने टेक्निकल इंजीनियर को भी अंदर भेजा जा रहा है। किसी भी तरह से उनको सुरक्षित बाहर निकालने की कोशिश की जा रही है।
Meanwhile, Telangana Chief Minister Revanth Reddy spoke to Prime Minister Narendra Modi about the incident and detailed the state government's ongoing efforts to rescue the trapped workers. PM Modi also assured him that the centre will assist with any sort of help required. On Saturday night, Revanth Reddy also reviewed and inquired the state ministers about the ongoing situation at the tunnel collapse site. Meanwhile, Rahul Gandhi spoke to Telangana Chief Minister over the phone. According to the Chief Minister's office, during the nearly 20-minute conversation, CM illustrated the urgency with which the government responded after a portion of the roof of the under-construction tunnel collapsed on Saturday.
What I was reading today somewhere was that this was a 20-year-old project which has just started work again about 4 days back, and some water channel has broken out, and due to which the water has started coming in and the tunnel has collapsed. Last time also I had spoken about something known as a feasibility study, which is done prior to deciding where the tunnel has to be constructed and how it is to be constructed. This feasibility study is a very important thing. We discussed last time, but I don't know whether it's being implemented. A lot of people take it lightly, in the sense, because it is just a feasibility study, some of the executives and the people who are there planning the tunnel, they think it is just a routine procedure which you can do away with it and let the contractor, main contractor, when he comes, he will do it on his own. But let me tell you, this is the feasibility study on which you decide whether the terrain and the area where you're constructing the tunnel is correct or not, or does it have any fault lines, which I have last time also told you that you have to bore, right from the top of the tunnel to the bottom where the tunnel is to be constructed, and you take out those rock cores to determine the overburden. And if you have that, I don't think in this age when we are creating such marvels in engineering and all, this is a very simple thing where once you get the overburden and the type of rock and the issues inside that rock, where there may be streamlets flowing, small water bodies there, you can easily design the tunnel and there should not be a problem. But because we take shortcuts, we do not do our work properly, that is why such things happen. Now coming to this tunnel, like I told you earlier also that this was an old tunnel which I have read somewhere, and just about 4 days back or a week back, construction has started. And there are, one of the reason for such disasters is, lining track expansion, which would have existed or would have developed over the time. So we should, I think, in all propriety, we should have done a kind of a, you can say check or a little chota feasibility study to ensure that the tunnel was safe to proceed ahead.
Now shifting focus. During his closing speech at the Conservative Political Action Conference or the CPAC on Saturday, US President Donald Trump criticized the United States Agency for International Development or USAID for allocating $18 million to support India's election process. Trump questioned the necessity of funding and suggested that India instead could assist the United States with its elections.
Moldova, $29 million goes to strengthen the political landscape and help them out so that they can vote for a radical left communist in Bangladesh. You had to see who they supported. You wouldn't believe, yeah, you would believe it. Nobody in this room would be in that group. $20 million for fiscal federalism and $19 million for biodiversity in Nepal. $47 million for improving learning outcomes in Asia. $18 million for helping India with its elections. Why the hell? Why don't we just go to all paper ballots? Let them help us with their elections, right? Voter ID. Wouldn't that be nice? We're giving money to India for elections. They don't need money. They take advantage of us pretty good. One of the highest tariff nations in the world. We try and sell something, they have a 200% tariff, and then we're giving them a lot of money to help them with their election.
In response to reports about the USAID's funding, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar addressed the concern, stating that the Indian government is examining the matter. Jaishankar voiced serious concern regarding allegations from the United States that millions of dollars were channeled to India to allegedly influence Indian elections.
That your security can be threatened without your leaving your house, because the thought processes, the influences, the narratives, your morale, your sense of what is right and wrong is all influenced by your phone, what you read every day, the pictures you see. So coming back to your question, look, I think some information has been put out there by the Trump administration people. Obviously that is concerning. It would suggest that, there are activities which has a certain objective out here to push a narrative or a viewpoint. I think as a government we are looking into it because, such organizations have an obligation to report. And my sense is, the facts will come out. Now, I read saying, so-and-so dealt with USAID or so-and-so. Look, it's not a question of did you deal with USAID or not. USAID was allowed, has been here historically. But USAID was allowed here in good faith, to do good faith activities. Now, suggestions are being made out of America that there are activities which are in bad faith. So, it surely warrants a look. And if there is something to it, I think the country should know who are the people involved in the bad faith activities.
Absolutely.
Moving on. In yet another shocking announcement, US tech billionaire Elon Musk asked all federal employees to share the progress that they have achieved in their work in the last week and said that failure to respond would be taken as a resignation. In fact, the email came from the Office of Personal Management's new HR email address but had no signature. The subject line reads, "What did you do last week?" As per reports, the email's contents say, and in fact I quote, Please reply to this email with approximately 5 bullets of what you accomplished last week and CC your manager. Please do not send any classified information, links or attachments. In fact, this comes hours after US President Donald Trump lauded Musk's work while suggesting him to be more aggressive. Now, staying with the United States, President Donald Trump says the US is close to an agreement with Ukraine on sharing revenue for the Ukrainian minerals. This will come as part of efforts to end the Ukrainian war. Here's a special report.
I'm dealing with President Zelensky. I'm dealing with President Putin. I'm trying to get the money back that, or secured, because, you know, Europe has given $100 billion. The United States has given $350 billion because we had a stupid, incompetent president and administration. 350. But here's worse. Europe gave it in the form of a loan. They get their money back. We gave it in the form of nothing. So I want them to give us something for all of the money that we put up. And I'm going to try and get the war settled, and I'm going to try and get all that death ended. So we're asking for rare earth and oil, anything we can get. We're going to get our money back because it's not fair. It's just not fair. And we will see, but I think we're pretty close to a deal, and we better be close to a deal.
Meanwhile, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni has come out in strong support of Donald Trump, accusing the left of hypocrisy and, in fact, fear-mongering over his return to power. Speaking at the same event as Trump at the Conservative Political Action Conference in Washington, Meloni argued that conservatives worldwide are unfairly branded as a threat to democracy, while liberal leaders are praised. She pointed to former US President Bill Clinton and former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair, saying they were celebrated for building a global liberal network in the 1990s. But when leaders like Trump, Modi or myself speaks, we are labelled as a danger to democracy. Meloni dismissed these claims as left's latest double standards, insisting that voters are no longer buying into such narratives.
Are winning, but because conservatives are now collaborating globally. When Bill Clinton and Tony Blair created the global leftist liberal network in the 90s, they were called statesmen. Today, when Trump, Meloni, Milei, or maybe Modi talk, they are called a threat to democracy. This is the left's double standard. But we're used to it. We are used to it. And the good news is people no longer believe in their lies. Despite all the mud they throw at us, citizens keep voting for us. Because simply, people are not naive as the left considers them. They vote for us because we defend freedom. We love our nations. We want secure borders. We preserve businesses and citizens from the green leftist insanity. We defend family and life. We fight against wokeism. We protect our sacred right to our faith and our free speech. And we stand for common sense.
Now it's a big day for Germany as it goes to polls today. The ruling coalition led by Chancellor Scholz collapsed over major disagreements on the economy. Now voters are heading to the polls, and in fact the big question is who is winning. According to the latest numbers, the Conservatives are leading with nearly 30% support. The far-right AfD is close behind at 21%, and Scholz SPD too way behind at just 16%. But it's not just about numbers. It's about the issues sharpening this election. First up, immigration. This is a major concern, especially after recent fatal attacks linked to asylum seekers. In fact, a conservative front-runner wants tougher border controls and stricter citizen rules. Scholz says he also supports border security, but in a way that's humane. Then there's Ukraine. Germany has been one of the Kiev's biggest supporter, but now there is a fierce debate over weapons. Merz wants send Taurus missiles which could strike deep inside Russia, while Scholz says that's like playing Russian roulette. Meanwhile, some far-left and far-right parties want to cut off military aid completely. And of course, the economy. Germany is in recession, so where should the money go? The SPD and the Greens say scrap debt limits and invest in defense, green energy and infrastructures, while Conservatives push for tax cuts and welfare reduction. Energy is yet another point of a big fight. Some parties want to bring back nuclear power, roll back green policies and even cancel on EU's ban on combustion engine cars. Meanwhile, the far-right AfD are calling climate change a hoax altogether. And then there's the cultural war. Conservatives and the AfD wants to reverse progressive policies like legal gender translations. In fact, cannabis legalization. They blame these reforms for crime and unrest. Meanwhile, Alice, while the openly gay far-right leader of the AfD has played major role in normalizing her party's image. Once fringe force, the AfD is now seriously contender backed by figures like Elon Musk and Hungary's Viktor Orban. In fact, Alice has also met the US Vice President J.D. Vance and was the first AfD leader to join a prime-time debate with Scholz and Merz. So what happens next? Whosoever wins will change and in fact will have huge challenges ahead on subjects like immigration, the economy, Ukraine and more. And with no clear majority, coalition talks could take a while. One thing for sure, Germany's next government will shape not just its future but the future of the entire Europe. Now, Germany holds an election today that is likely to result in another uneasy collision if the far right polls highly as expected. Take a look at the 4 major candidates bidding for the lead role of the Chancellor. Here's a special report.
Germany holds a snap national election on Sunday, following the collapse of Chancellor Olaf Scholz's three-way coalition. Another uneasy coalition is the most likely result. Polls predict second place for the far-right Alternative for Germany, or AfD, which is putting forward a candidate for Chancellor for the first time. But no other main party will work with it, so forming a government is likely to be complicated. Here are the 4 candidates for Germany's next Chancellor. Germany's next Chancellor is likely to be Conservative Friedrich Merz. His opposition Conservative CDU-CSU bloc is way ahead in polls, but will need at least one partner. Merz moved his bloc further to the right than predecessor Angela Merkel. Last month, rivals accused him of breaking a so-called firewall against cooperating with the far right, when he passed a motion in Parliament, with AfD support, on cracking down on irregular migration. He has ruled out forming a government with the AfD. The CDU is pro-market and wants to cut red tape, encourage investments, and reduce energy prices to boost the economy. Scholz's coalition collapsed due to infighting, and his SPD, with 16%, has dropped to third place. But it's seen as likely to return as part of a grand coalition of centrists with Merz's CDU. Scholz presents himself as an experienced leader in command of the details. He rebuked US Vice President J.D. Vance after he endorsed the AfD as a political partner. Scholz favours helping Ukraine fend off Russia's invasion, but has recently struck a cautious tone, emphasising the need for diplomacy. The SPD wants to raise taxes for high-income earners and revive a wealth tax. Alice Weidel leads the far-right anti-immigration Alternative for Germany, which is polling second, but has pariah status among other parties in a country haunted by its Nazi past. Weidel has accused mainstream parties of disrespecting German voters in their treatment of her party. She met Vance on his recent visit to Munich when he endorsed her party, as has billionaire Elon Musk. Weidel is openly gay, but her party has become the loudest voice against LGBTQ+ rights in Parliament. The AfD also wants Germany to ditch the euro, reintroduce the Deutschmark, and potentially leave the EU. and to end weapons deliveries to Kiev and resume good relations with Moscow. The Greens' Robert Habeck is the current economy minister. His party is just behind Scholz's on 13% of the vote. Habeck's Greens want a more open asylum policy, promoting state-backed sea rescue initiatives and simplifying family reunification processes and enhancing integration. They also want reforms to allow higher public spending.
Now, important update coming in from West Asia, where Israel has delayed the release of hundreds of Palestinian prisoners until Hamas meets its condition. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office announced early Sunday that Israel would hold off release of 620 Palestinian prisoners and detainees until the release of the next hostage has been assured and without the humiliating ceremonies. This refers to the recent hostage handover by the Hamas, which the United States officials criticized for violating international law by lacking dignity and respect. Israel's announcement, which also accuses Hamas of repeatedly violating the month-old ceasefire, came after the group released 6 Israeli hostages from Gaza on Saturday as part of the truce-mediated exchanges. The 6 were the last living Israeli captives scheduled for release under the first phase of the ceasefire. The bodies of the 4 dead Israeli hostages are expected to be handed over, in fact, in the next week. It remains still unclear whether Israel is seeking assurances on that release or additional hostage transfers. Meanwhile, Hamas frees 6 hostages from Gaza on Saturday, the last living Israeli captives slated, in fact, for release under the first phase of the fragile ceasefire accord. Here's a special report.
Hamas freed 6 hostages from Gaza on Saturday in exchange for hundreds of Palestinian prisoners and detainees. Tal Shoham and Avera Mengistu were released first in southern Gaza's Rafah, followed by Aliyah Cohen, Omer Shem Tov and Omer Venkert, all seized from the site of the Nova Music Festival in Hamas's October 7, 2023 attack on southern Israel. They were handed over to the Red Cross in Nusayrat to be transported to Israeli forces. Dozens of militants stood guard in a crowd that had gathered to watch the handover as armed and masked Hamas men stood either side of the 3 captives. Hamas later handed over a 6th hostage in Gaza City, Hisham al-Sayed, with no public ceremony. Al-Sayed and Mengistu have been held by Hamas since they entered Gaza of their own accord around a decade ago. Shoham was abducted from Kibbutz Be'eri along with his wife and 2 children, who were freed in a brief truce in November 2023. The 6 are the last living hostages from a group of 33 due to be freed in the first stage of the ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas that took effect on January 19th. Hundreds of Israelis gathered in what has become known as Hostages Square in Tel Aviv. Some lit candles under photos of the Bibas family, whose bodies were returned this week. Directed hostage releases have included public ceremonies in which captives are taken on stage and some made to speak. They have faced criticism, with the United Nations denouncing what it calls the parading of hostages. Hamas rejected the criticism Saturday, describing the ceremonies as a solemn show of Palestinian unity. In return for the hostages, Israel is expected to release over 600 Palestinian prisoners and detainees held in its jails. They will include 445 Gazans rounded up by Israeli forces during the war, as well as dozens of convicts serving lengthy or life terms. Around 60 more Israeli captives, less than half of whom are believed to be alive, remain in Gaza.
Now, powerful cold air mass has triggered heavy snowfall along the Sea of Japan coast, blanketing streets and buildings in white. The snow continues to pile up, with more expected through Monday. In fact, these are the visuals on your screens. Certain cities have recorded a staggering 382 centimeters of snow as of early Sunday. The Japan's meteorological agency has issued warning across multiple regions, urging residents to stay cautious about the traffic disruptions and risk of snow-related accidents. Japan turning into a winter wonderland, but problems and issues for the localites mounting over there. Heavy snowfall, in fact, visuals on your screen. Japan, this snowfall is a fresh spell which has been received at the coast of Japan. In fact, this is near the sea of Japan, and in fact, you can see on the screens how this entire area has been turned into winter wonderland, though the authorities say that more snowfall is expected in the region, and in fact, different advisories have been issued for the public to view this situation from a cautionary prism so that they can venture out whenever it's utmost necessary, or perhaps authorities urging that not to venture out unless you're well aware about your surroundings.